Which one am I watching, by the way? Watching this. Is that the live or is this the live?
You're live now.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this second Baker Street live stream event. And thank you very much for joining me. First of all, let's get this out of the way. It's been COVID-19 lockdown, and like many people, I've had to take a haircut. And I mean a real haircut. I've had to get my own clippers and for the first time cut my own hair. So please get the hair cutting jokes all out the way now. You've got a complete free hit in the YouTube comment and chat window. Just get them all out the way now and we can get that over and done with. Yes, I've cut my own hair and all of that. So we have got quite a lot of people registered and joining us right now. I think there are more than 460 odd watching and coming on this live stream. So the theme for tonight, the theme that we're covering on tonight's live stream is really, okay, so once we get released from this COVID-19 lockdown, what exactly are the opportunities for property investors? And more importantly, while we are in lockdown, what can we do as property investors to prepare for this new world, if you like, of property opportunity that will emerge after we are all released? That's what we'll be covering, and I've got some special guests and I'll introduce you to them and explain how the format of tonight is going to work. If you're new to this event, let me just tell you a little bit about the Baker Street Property Meet. We've been going now for 4 years. The Baker Street Property Meet normally meets in central London. We meet once every month. We typically have 300 people turn up to our live event, and it is the largest monthly property networking event for entrepreneurs in the property business that takes place every single month. Obviously, since COVID-19 lockdown, we've had to change our game a little bit. And last month we did our first Baker Street live stream event, and we had about 1,060 odd people, not odd people, but very passionate property entrepreneur people on our live stream last month. And that was absolutely fantastic. And we'll probably get the same, if not more, join us on tonight's feed. Going forward, when we come out of lockdown, the way we see this going forward is that we will continue to run our monthly Baker Street Property Meet in central London, but we'll also do a live stream like this once a month with slightly different formats to sort of keep it all varied and all the rest of it. But more on that a little bit later. If you are watching this from far afield, much further away than you would know, that would normally be considered the London catchment area, or even if you're watching us from abroad, do let us know in the chat window. Keep your sort of comments flying. The way we are doing the chat is that the chat window on YouTube is something for you guys, really. It's your chance to network with each other, have a little bit of banter, talk amongst yourselves, tell us your live comments of what you think is being said at the time and what we're kind of delivering to you as content. Just keep that going. So, some people are saying they're struggling to hear. Are we okay with sound? Just checking a few things here with the sound. Let's see whether we can beef that up a little bit. Any better? We'll just try to, we're getting some comments about the sound. Okay, we're getting people from Glasgow, we're getting people from Ireland, that's pretty good. Bedford, that's pretty far away, yes. Good to have you all on board. Now, if you want to ask the panel a question, then what we have got is Instagram. And we'll just put a little caption for our Instagram site. It's at Baker Street Property Meet. So go there, and if you click on our Instagram story, then there's a little window opens up and you can ask us a question. So if you've got a question for me or any of our other speakers tonight or on anything that they've said, then raise that on Instagram. And has that come up on screen, the chat? That's brilliant. So that's all coming up. Now, also, folks, I know you guys are all sitting at home watching this And some people might be relaxing with a nice bottle of beer or glass of wine and feet up by the sofa. And what I want to know is, how are you enjoying this live stream at home, wherever you are? Take a pic of yourself watching the live stream, enjoying the live stream in the comfort or discomfort of your own home, and post it at Baker Street Property Meet on Instagram or on Facebook on our Baker Street Property Meet Facebook group. We'll have a little prize for the picture that gets the most likes. So have a little bit of fun with that and take a picture and post that up on our Instagram, Baker Street Property Meet, and we'll see whose pictures get liked the most. So the theme, let's just have a look at how many people we've got on the live stream joining us today. We've got quite a few, 839 people watching now. That's absolutely brilliant. Let's just see, let's just tell you a little bit about who we've got and what the theme is. As I said, the theme is post-COVID-19 opportunities for property investors. Well, I have 4 people lined up that you're going to hear from. Each person is going to give a little talk, a little rundown, and what we're going to cover is the post-COVID-19 opportunities for property investors, what people should be doing now while they're in lockdown. So it'll be quite varied, and we'll be covering it from quite different angles. First off, I've got Mark Alexander. Mark Alexander is founder of Property 118, and he'll be looking at some of the business planning opportunities post-COVID-19 that property investors should be looking at. I've also got Simon Zutshi. Simon Zutshi is a highly respected educator and an amazing entrepreneur and businessman, runs one of the largest networking group of networking events across the country and all of that. Been in the business a long time, is also into crowdfunding and all that sort of stuff. He'll be talking, giving his perspective on post-COVID-19 opportunities for residential property investors. My name's Ranjan Bhattacharya. I'm your host for the evening, but I'll be sharing with you post-COVID-19 opportunities for commercial property investors and what you guys can be doing now to prepare. Now, we did have Shaf Razul lined up to join us today, but I have to he sends his apologies. He sent me an email last Friday. Unfortunately, he's ill. I spoke to him on Saturday. He's running a bit of a high temperature and he's lost in his voice. I mean, in light of the pandemic we're now in, we all hope and pray that this is nothing more than a flu. I do urge you guys to reach out to Shaf on social media and just wish him well and wish him a fast and speedy recovery. And hopefully he can come and join us on a future episode. I mean, I think that the key thing is we just wish him well and hope he recovers, and it's not anything, it's just a mild flu. I really hope it's a flu. So we haven't got Shaf lined up, but Shaf has done an amazing job, really, on his YouTube channel, and he's also done some great work following on from a BBC investigation into Samuel Leeds and some goings on in the training business. Stay tuned for later on, because we'll be shining a light on the property education sector. We have some revelations of our own of fake testimonials used on websites, so stay tuned for that. That's all coming up. But more importantly, we want to look at what's actually being done to raise standards in the property education sector, so that when people look to get educated in the world of property, they can actually choose an educator with some confidence. With that in mind, I've invited Cyril Thomas. Cyril Thomas is chair of the Property Investors Bureau. It's a new body that's been brought up to introduce a industry standard code of practice and be like a kite mark, so that people who are looking for property education can do so with some certainty that there are some accredited providers, and hopefully some of the sharp practices that we have seen highlighted by the BBC and on Shaf's channel can be addressed. So we'll be talking to Cyril later on about all of that. Let's just see how many folks we've got on the call so far. 930 people watching now. Let's say hi to our speakers. Can we get our eminent panel on the line there. So, hi, Mark, Simon, and Cyril. Are you guys
Good evening,
okay?
Ranjan.
Fantastic, Ranjan. Thank you.
You're broadcasting live to nearly 1,000 people on YouTube. Do you want to say hi?
Yes, good evening, Ranjan.
Good evening, Ranjan.
Good evening, all. Good evening, all. So, without much further ado, what we shall go straight to, really, I think, is our first speaker. So, as I mentioned, our theme tonight is how to capitalize on the opportunities once this lockdown is over. Because this lockdown will be over soon. We all will be able to get out and do our business. And I guess we're all dying to. I mean, I've been dying for a haircut so badly, I just did it myself. But anyway, so we're going to look at a number of different things. The first speaker is Mark Alexander. Mark Alexander is a very accomplished businessman. He was a founder of a business called the Money Center in the years gone by. What was one of the largest buy-to-let mortgage brokers in the country. He owns a significant portfolio of buy-to-let properties himself. He's also founder of Property 118, who've done a sterling job at protecting really buy-to-let property owners' interests. Back in 2009, after the last credit crunch, there were some moves by a particular building society to basically rip up their contracts with buy-to-let mortgage holders and raise their interest rates to, quite frankly, whatever they wanted. Mark Alexander put together a legal team basically to fight that in the courts and stopped that particular lender from raising all our mortgage rates unilaterally. And there were a lot of other mortgage lenders waiting in the wings to see how that court case turned out. And if it turned out the other way, then we would have all been in a lot of trouble. So we all have an eternal debt to pay to Mark Alexander for that. And that also won him I can't remember what category, but it was a significant award, a recent Property Investor Awards event. So Mark Alexander, business planning guru as well, who's helped so many people escape the potential death trap of Section 24. So you're talking to us from Florida.
I am indeed. I'm supposed to be flying back on the 1st of June, but we'll have to see if that happens. So my home is Malta, as some of you may know, and I'm actually in the process of moving to Portugal. So I'm kind of all over the place right now. What I haven't got to worry about is the haircut. So that's not so much of a problem for me. But thanks for that fantastic introduction, Ranjan.
Absolutely. I've probably just understated your talents, I'm sure. But listen, Mark, Mark's a good friend of mine. You know, when you are in the country, I thoroughly enjoy our beers together and all of that. And whenever I chat to Mark, particularly about business structuring and all the rest of it, there's never a conversation where I go away without having learned something new. So I find him an inspirational guy, and I'm sure he'll share some of that with you. It's really over to you for 10 minutes, Mark, on what people can do business planning wise after we get out of lockdown.
Thanks very much. And just before I do start off on my little presentation, good luck, Chef. I hope you get well soon. I was really looking forward to spending some time on a broadcast with another person who's had a business and taken a business into the Sunday Times Profit Track 100. If you want to do some due diligence on me, have a look. Money Center, Profit Track 100, and you'll see that my business ranked 38 in 2008. So anyway, that's well in the past. But it does give me a little bit of an opportunity to explain to the other viewers that business planning is not something that I'm unfamiliar with. I've done lots and lots of business planning. I've taken businesses, many businesses, all the way through the different stages that you might usually be familiar with. So sole ownership, partnership, limited liability partnership, limited company, and even PLC. I've done all of those transitions myself. But what do we do in COVID, the COVID situation? Well, my first piece of advice to anybody is if you're setting out on a destination or a journey, you need to know two things. One is where you are right now, and two is where you're heading. And when I talk to a lot of landlords, they think they know the answer to both questions. And yet I ask one question that they don't know the answer to, and then they realize, it was different to the way I thought. And the question I asked them is, how much tax are you going to pay next January and next June? And they go, well, it's only April. We've only just finished the tax year. And I say, yeah, I know, because I've done my accounts. All my accounts for all of my businesses are done. I see quarterly management accounts, and I keep a complete handle on the business. And I can't possibly know where or hit a target if I'm blindfolded, and I can't find my way to a destination if I don't know where I am. Because if I look on a map, and I might know where I'm going, but if I don't know where I am, it's very difficult to find my own route. So the first one is know where you are right now. Get your accounts done as quickly as you possibly can. Next one, know your destination. Now, as I said, there is a process of transition for every type of business. And it usually starts off with working on your own. So you might be known as a sole owner or a sole trader. Then it develops into partnership, usually a limited company. And there are transitional processes that allow that to happen in the most tax efficient manner. And a really important part of business planning is knowing that you're in the right structure right now. Now, when you start on the journey, and I liken this to when you made your first trip to school on your own without mum and dad dropping you off or walking you to school, you felt like a big boy or a big girl walking to school that very first time. You knew where you were going, but after a little while, you got fed up of walking to school and you changed the mode of transport. So you maybe had a bike, and then maybe later on, when you were hit 16 and you went to sixth form, maybe you had a moped, and then you had your car at 17. So you can change your mode of transport. And it's exactly the same in business. So take a real serious look. Many of you will have heard of the restrictions on finance cost relief, the Section 24 tax, as many know it. And what I really don't understand these days is why people are still either a sole owner or a joint owner, because it's so easy just to be a partnership. You can be in partnership with your children, you can be in partnership with your spouse, you can be in partnership with your parents, your siblings, anybody else. And people say to me, oh, well, that's really complicated. What about partnership mortgages? There is no such thing. A partnership mortgage doesn't exist. A partnership is just two or more people engaged in business together, and they just borrow jointly. So think very seriously. If you are currently just joint owners, or you are just a sole owner, then think through where you want to be. Do you want your children to inherit the business? Do you want to leave the business as a legacy? Is that part of your plan? And you can use this time whilst you're in lockdown to get your accounts done, plan where you're going, and know what the optimal structure and the optimal vehicle is to get to that destination. So I think that's my core message for now, Ranjan. I'll hand back to you. I don't know whether I've taken the full 10 minutes, but if we haven't, then it gives us an opportunity to have more questions later on.
Mute. That's absolutely fabulous, Mark. So, I mean, we've got we're actually releasing a video on this YouTube channel on Friday night, actually, a video I shot with Mark Alexander. If you're interested in basically retiring abroad, he's going to take us through the A to Z of moving abroad and leaving your property portfolio here. So that's coming up on our YouTube channel. That's released at 7 o'clock on Friday. So if you want to, if you're not subscribed already, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon, because we put out new content each and every week and you'll get notified. Also on Sunday evening, we've got a YouTube video coming out, which is part 2 of the case study that we highlighted with Kieran Gill. In part 1, we followed Kieran Gill through her first commercial to residential conversion when we just picked up the keys. And in this part 2 video, this is when basically the job is completed. So that's releasing Sunday night. So if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to our YouTube channel to follow through. So let's look at how many people. I mean, a lot of people. We've got 1,048 people online at the moment enjoying it. A lot of comments, a few comments about my pastel jackets. Thank you very much. A lot of great comments about your good self, Mark. I'm just reading something at random. People are asking, what's the benefit of being a partnership? Is that something that you can kind of answer quickly? It's from someone aptly named Bingo too.
Very quickly, is that the partnership can allocate profit disproportionately to ownership. And there are several different types of partnership. I won't go into those now. We'll do that as another video for another day, Ranjan. So different ways to get into partnership. But let's say, for example, you've got yourself, your wife, and your 2 children. You could allocate profits disproportionately to their ownership. They might come in with a 0 capital account, for example. You allocate profits to them. And it's actually possible for many smaller landlords, like 10 properties or less, to actually dissipate the impact on Section 24 restrictions on finance cost relief just through smart profit allocation. And the partnership gives you the ability to do that.
Okay, that's brilliant. And in your background, we can see this Property 118 TV logo. I know you're going to launch that next week. What's all that about? What will people get from that?
Okay, so Property 118 TV is going to be my live YouTube channel. Everything that we do is going to be live. They're going to be really tiny little segments, 5 to 15 minutes. And what I'm going to be sharing you is something that people think is a secret, but it really isn't. And that's the HMRC internal manuals. You've got to be a really boring person to read all 12,000 words in them. And then to be able to digest them is even more, and to be able to create strategies out of them is even harder. So what I'm going to do is actually explain certain strategies, like that we've just said about partnerships, and actually show people the relevant sections of the manual. So if they want to go and have a conversation with their accountant, they can say, but this is the manual that you need to be looking at, Mr. Accountant. So when the accountant says you can't do that, it can be done. And I'm just going to have a series of all of those. I'm not going to go through all 12,000 words, but we're going to hopefully build up a really big backlog of these things that people can dip into when they want to find out about certain tax tips. From time to time, we'll have webinars, and obviously we'll have guests like yourself, but that's not going to happen very often. It's going to be predominantly focused on tax and helping landlords to have these tips and hints going forwards.
So decipher, humanize, and interpret, if you like, the tax manuals and the exact tax rulings for property entrepreneurs and investors.
Indeed, and to dispel myths, because there's so much bad advice on the internet, and especially Facebook. They will be able to dispel the myths by actually showing HMRC's own internal manuals, the ones that the inspectors use to challenge you if they want to do so.
That is a very good point. There's so much tittle-tattle on social media. It's often wrong, and they don't revert directly or refer to the manuals themselves. Any plans of doing TikTok, perhaps dances to music to explain tax?
Maybe not. I was a professional breakdancer in my teenage years, as Ranjan knows, but I'm, as you can see, I wore all my hair off the top of my head, and I'm way too old and tired for that these days, so maybe not.
Okay, listen, thanks to Mark. Please give your comments in the chat window. Tell Mark what a fantastic job he's done, and pop any questions that you may have for him. We'll try to tackle them at the end. Thanks very much, Mark, staying on the line. We'll have him back a little bit later on for the Q&A session that we'll be doing shortly. Got 1,063 people tuned in at the moment. Thank you to all of you. So let me just give you my 10 minutes, if you like, on opportunities for property investors. Consider me the warm-up act to the next speaker, Simon Zutshi, who will be sharing with you the opportunities for residential property investors post-COVID-19 lockdown. So I'm going to be talking about the opportunities for property investors after COVID-19 in the world of commercial property. First of all, who am I? Well, my name is Ranjan Bhattacharya. You can look me up on this channel. But a couple of things I will say is that I've been through a couple of recessions. I've been through the recession in the 1990s and also the 2009 recession that was caused by the Lehman Brothers crash and the credit crunch. And for me, I see a lot of common signs and very much rinse and repeat in terms of strategies which worked well back then. The thing with recessions is no one really wishes for them, but the fact of the matter is a lot of people get scared, a lot of people get frightened, a lot of rules of the game change and pivot from the boom time that preceded it. And that scares off a lot of people. That scares off a lot of people, and a lot of people that succeeded in the boom simply don't have a strategy and a plan of attack as the market changes and the whole dynamics change. And that makes the market a lot more subdued and quiet. But the fact of the matter is, fortunes are made in recession. No one wanted this COVID-19. I certainly didn't want it, but it's here now. So what can you do about it? Well, what you can do about it is take some of these tips that you're hearing from all three speakers and put them in a melting pot and apply them to your sort of business, if you like. So what do I think are the opportunities going forward? Well, first of all, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We will come out of COVID-19 into a recession. You can't just bring the economy to a halt and have no effect on the economy. And it will take time to start up again. You can't just shut down an engine and start it up and you're back on all thrusters, firing all thrusters the day after we return back. Most experts are predicting, economists are predicting a 10% fall in GDP. How does that compare to previous recessions? Well, in the fall of in the 1990s, GDP fell by about 2 to 3%, and in 2009, GDP fell by 2 to 3%. It didn't fall that much. It fell by a little bit more in the early 1990s. So this fall will be bigger, and that's the thing. But it should bounce back. It should bounce back to pre-COVID-19 levels. The question is how long that bounce back will take. A lot will depend on jobs. To bring it back to the property market, residential prices and recovery of a residential market will be subdued for a little bit of time, and it may fall a little bit in places, and it will bounce back as the employment market bounces back. As the people who have had their jobs displaced get re-employed again, the job market gets better, and we return to pre-COVID-19 employment levels, we'll start to see more and more of a recovery in the residential prices, in my view. That's what tends to be what we have seen in recent times. How long will that take? That could be 2 to 3 years. So that is a 2 to 3 years opportunity where the property market will be a little bit slow paced. Now, here's the thing about recessions. Commercial property always lags behind residential property in terms of recovery. Residential property prices will recover much faster than commercial property, and that will be dependent on recovery of the jobs market. Commercial property will lag behind that a little bit. But here's the thing that is different in this recession compared to any others. In this recession, we have permitted development rights. Permitted development rights are rights to redevelop properties without planning permission, where you can convert commercial spaces into residential uses very easily without a lot of bureaucracy. And guess what? As soon as we're out of lockdown, we are going to have some kind of emergency COVID-19 recovery budget. That's on the cards. And expect to see measures in there such as planning permission reform and further permitted development rights being introduced, such as the ability to make extra floors above commercial spaces under permitted development. Now, that's going to be absolutely fantastic for everybody. What does that mean? That means that because over the next, the fallout of COVID-19 is that there are going to be tons of commercial properties come onto the marketplace, more than we've ever seen before. That's because some businesses are going to be failing, and also some commercial landlords will run into cash flow problems if their tenants have missed rents and the like. So there'll be a lot more supply of commercial property. Now, not all of those will be opportunities for you. What you've got to do is identify the ones with easily implementable permitted development opportunities, where you can take commercial space and then convert that into residential space. If you do that, what you can do is you can buy distressed assets at low prices, which are commercial, using permitted development rights and the minimum of hassle. Convert as much floor space as you can into residential floor space. which will be on a completely different recovery path as we come out of the recession. And that's the magic. Sorry to use your phrase, Simon, but that's the magic really of taking commercial space, which is on a slower recovery path, converting that as much as possible into residential, and it gets on a quicker path to recovery. That is the golden opportunity. But don't wait too long to exploit this opportunity, because here's another prediction of what will happen. As soon as the job market starts to recover, and we get to employment levels which are pre-COVID-19, and the residential market starts to bounce back, I reckon we are going to see a massive spike period of growth in property prices. Why is that? Well, the amount of quantitative easing this government has done to get us out of COVID-19 has been phenomenal. It's already twice as much as they did in 2009 with the banking collapse. And there's more to come. Now, when you print that much money and you put that much money into the economy, at some point, it is going to create an asset bubble, and it's going to have a positive effect on asset prices. It's exactly what happened in the aftermath of 2009, after the economic recovery and the jobs recovery took hold, and it became established in pretty much 2012, 2013. The asset bubble effect, the aftermath of quantitative easing, began to take hold. And basically, if you had fixed assets, because you can print money, but you can't print houses, you can't print property, those sort of assets rose in value. Savills, the research organization, came up with a survey earlier this year, and they said that the best 10 years to have bought property was over the last 30 years was in 2009. Because if you bought 2009, if you bought property in 2009, you'd have had the best subsequent 10 years of growth. And that was simply because after the 2009 recession, it took time for the job market and the economy to bounce back. And as soon as it did, the effects of the quantitative easing became apparent in asset prices and asset inflation. So I see this as a very exciting time for people to get clued up, because you've got about a 2 to 3 year window of opportunity to have a bit of fun before that asset bubble effect of this quantitative easing starts to happen. The thing with a slow market is it's great fun. It's great fun if you know about creative strategies. It's great fun if you know about lease options. It's great fun if you know about delayed completions, vendor financing arrangements. All these creative strategies work a treat. Why? Because the property market slows down. When vendors don't have many buyers, there aren't many offers for properties. So vendors are all ears to listen to a creative offer. In a boom market, there's someone around the corner with a cash offer, and they'll buy unconditionally. In a slow market, everything slows down, and that gives savvy investors and savvy entrepreneurs who are knowledged up with how to do these things the ability to make creative offers and tie up deals using the minimum of their own cash. So there's plenty of fun. What to do in lockdown? Well, learn about this stuff. Learn about what you can do with commercial buildings under permitted development. Learn about how you can use creative deal structuring techniques and methods, if you like, to pitch imaginative offers to your vendors. Take a look at some commercial properties that were on sale before the COVID-19 crisis, because guess what? They haven't sold now. And once we come out of lockdown, those properties which were on sale in January will have been on sale a long time, and those sellers start to get more and more motivated. So there's some ideas about commercial property and what to do. I guess I'm throwing it over to my fantastic panel, really, to tell me what you think.
So Ranjan, I completely agree with you. I think that both commercial and residential will have some amazing opportunities. I'll talk more about residential later on. But, you know, with so many businesses, unfortunately, going out of business, and even, it's interesting, I think people always see commercial property as a very safe, passive thing, especially if you have really good tenants. But it's amazing how many big companies have said to their landlords, we're not going to pay you rent, which is probably the first time that's ever happened. And I think there's going to be a whole load of commercial landlords who might think, you know what, this is not as safe as I thought it was. And I agree that I think it's going to be a real glut, and it's going to be a window of opportunity to get in where there's more commercial property available than there is demand. They're going to be some great opportunities, especially combining it, as you say, with that permitted development, turning it into residential. It's going to be an amazing time for those that are ready and educated.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Cyril, what are your thoughts? You've got a couple of commercial properties yourself. Oh, sorry, let me unmute him. Sorry.
Investor Hatton today, am I? So I'm really not trying to give you my property investment opinions, but I am looking forward to seeing what comes onto the market here in Colchester on the commercial front. Commercial properties have treated me well in the past, and throughout the Corona period, my tenants have continued to pay, which is good. I'm particularly interested in warehouse opportunities. They don't come up that often here in Colchester, so I'll be keeping an eye out.
Brilliant, brilliant. Mark, any comments? Let me just make sure. Yes, hi, Mark.
Yeah, I am unmuted. Yeah, totally agree with you, Ranjan. And it goes back to what I was saying about structure, and you'll know about this as well, because if you want to transform from one structure, for example, owning residential and selling them and going to commercial, then washing out your capital gains is a great way to do that. Otherwise, you've got to pay the capital gains tax. So I know I keep hitting this stuff on the tax side, and you would expect that from me.
Yes, yes.
I've been 31 years in business. I'm selling out, so I'm not buying anything. I've made that decision back a long time ago. 2009 is the last time I bought a large chunk of properties. So I'm really pleased that you told me that news. But I'm selling out now. You know, I'm in the twilight years of my career, so I'm just selling them down and enjoying life in Florida, Malta, and Portugal, or Russia, or wherever else I tend to be these days.
A real globetrotter.
Good luck to the guys that are starting out and getting into that market, because I think I totally agree with you. Fantastic opportunity right now.
Brilliant. Yes, and you know, I mean. Yes, thank you very much, guys. Everyone who's been around the block a little bit knows the power of recessions, really, for having a bit of fun. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the comments. I've got people. I got some people on the live stream. Rajesh, he's obviously seen a few of my talks. He's making a reference to my usual reference to Hull. I didn't mention Hull today. I don't want to offend anyone. Okay, plenty of great comments. A lot of people talking about commercial conversions and the like. Plenty. Good to see so many people on the call. 1,164 people on the line right now. So Simon, they've all come on for you.
I doubt it. It's great to be on with such an esteemed panel. I've got a lot of respect for Mark, and obviously for yourself as well, and for Cyril. So thank you very much for asking me on, Ranjan. So
before you get going, let me just introduce you. Sorry, I mean I should. I mean I guess everyone knows Simon Zutshi. He's been in the game such a long time. I remember we met way back. Must have been late 1990s.
No, I don't think it was late. I think it was probably early 2000s. We probably met.
Early 2000s, yes.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing about there's a certain thing, I think, because often in these times, and I wanted to kind of say this before bringing Simon on, is that it's very easy to see people who are talking about property strategies who basically have only been around 5 seconds. When you come into a recession, you've really got to look at who was around at the last one and who survived. I mean, there are many people that do well in a boom, and it all goes belly up the minute the market turns a little bit. So it's very important to look at who is giving the advice. And Simon has been around the block. He's been there through a recession. He's come out with some sort of killer strategies, if you like. He's also been very big on crowdfunding and funding, responsible for putting his money where his mouth is, if you like, in terms of backing deals and backing the sort of strategies that he teaches. He runs the PIN networking meet. He runs the mastermind program, which has been going for how many years now?
2007 when we started, just at the peak of the last boom.
2007. fantastic guy. I love all the conversations I have with him. Again, another chap who, when I'm on the phone with him, I don't have a conversation where I don't go away learning something. So it's a great pleasure to have Simon Zutshi on the show. Simon, welcome. All yours, and I'm taking notes at whatever you're going to say.
So thank you, Ranjan, very kind, and thank you for asking me to come. This is my first Baker Street meeting, and hopefully not my first, but my last, but it's really good to be able to come and share. So first of all, I agree with everything you've already said. I started investing back in '95, and I was really just dabbling, and it took me 8 years to kind of replace my income because I didn't really know what I was doing. And in 2003, I set up Property Investors Network because there was no networking meetings anywhere in the UK, and I learned about the importance of getting around like-minded people and learning from them. And I started, I managed to leave my job at Cadbury's, and I'd started to teach other people what I had done. And I realized actually I really enjoyed teaching, and I particularly enjoyed it when people came back and they said, hey, I did this and I bought something and it really worked. And by the way, the early 2000s were a bit like the last 5-6 years, actually. You could buy anything in 2003, 2004. 6 months later, it would be more valuable. And at that point, anybody could borrow money, which was probably why we had the credit crunch eventually, because there was some irresponsible lending and irresponsible borrowing. But anyway, so I was teaching people, and I really enjoyed that, and I wanted to get serious about it in 2007. So I started Mastermind. I wrote a book called Property Magic, which hopefully many people have read, in 2008. And we're now currently in the 6th edition of that. And I mention that because guess what? The market keeps on changing. And what you said, Ranjan, was, we were in 2007 when I started Mastermind. We were buying property, no money down with Mortgage Express. Come into 2008, things are starting to change. May 2008, Mortgage Express completely disappeared. And I know some investors who had been very successful early 2000s, but because they only had one strategy and they didn't adapt, they didn't change, they were stuck for years. They did nothing. They thought, well, you can't buy property anymore. So I guess my message is that, especially if you've been investing since 2009, you've been in a bit of a rising market, and what worked in the past may not necessarily work in the future. So you need to adapt, and you need to look at what's going to work. So what's that going to be? Well, if we go into recession, which I think most of us agree is probably the case, and people are losing jobs, people are going to start cutting back on their spending. People are going to look after their money more. And I think we're going to see a couple of things happen. A lot of people who are living maybe on their own in apartments or studios where they're paying the rent and also the bills, I think they might think that's too expensive. And I think we'll see some people maybe moving, living at home with their parents if they live in the same city or town, if that's possible. But if that's not possible, they might be downscaling to live in shared accommodation in HMOs. And normally when we have recession, when times are tight, actually demand for that kind of accommodation, affordable accommodation, actually goes up. So instead of someone living in a property on their own, where they've got to pay the bills, in an HMO, the bills are included in the rent. And actually sometimes people might have more, they might have more space in an HMO because they've got their own private room, then they've got the shared kitchen, maybe shared living room. So actually might be a bit more space, even though it is shared. So I think we're definitely going to see that. Also, as people lose their jobs, professionals lose their jobs, as companies cut back and companies go out of business, I think we'll see a migration of labor around the country, people moving, relocating just to go and get new jobs. So as someone goes to a new city or new town they don't know, again, moving into an HMO makes a lot of sense because it's very cost effective. They have an instant social life because there are people they're similar to them, they can go out to the pub with, etc. So this is why I believe HMOs is going to be a bit of a good thing to get into. Now, is there an oversupply of HMOs? Yes, absolutely there is. Most places, there are more HMOs than there are people who want to live in them. However, if you go on to spareroom.co.uk, which is the main website where landlords advertise their rooms, you'll see that actually there are lots of properties, but they're very average, very standard properties. They're all magnolia walls, they're not such great furniture. And so actually, if you have a better than average product, if you look after your property, if you use decor and furnishings to make it look better, you're not trying to compete on price like everyone else. You will hit the more discerning client who's prepared to pay more. Or if there's two properties, one looks fantastic, your property, one not so good, the better looking properties will go first. So I think as long as you have good property in good locations, actually that's not going to be a problem. And as you've always said, residential property, there's not enough accommodation. We live on an island with a limited supply of accommodation and an increasing population. The long-term trend of property prices are up. Doesn't always go up. We saw it come down massively 2008, 2009. I believe it's going to come down again this year and into 2021. I personally don't think it's going to be as much as the price drop we saw in 2008. It's interesting, in 2008, it was very much the banks that were restricting the finance because they had all this toxic debt. They didn't want to lend. They brought down the loan to value. Whereas this time, it's not the banks actually controlling it, which is a bit of a different scenario. We also have very, very low interest rates. So as long as you know what you're doing, a great time to be getting into residential property. I completely agree with the commercial opportunities to convert into residential are going to be there. And if you're a developer, by the way, I think there'll be some larger to medium-sized developers who might have land that they've land banked or with or without planning. And those businesses that have got all those expenses going out, but no sales from properties coming in right now, I think we'll see some people who've got land maybe looking to get rid of that and dump that just to bring cash into their businesses. So I think once we settle down a bit, there'll be some opportunities to pick up some good development opportunities in residential. You've got to be careful about end values because we don't know quite where those are going to be. There's going to be an amazing opportunity, I said, with HMOs. And at the beginning of this year, well before COVID, I was talking about the opportunity of Section 24. Mark touched on that. There are many landlords who are thinking about, do I really want to be in this anymore? Do I want to now get out of this market? I mean, Mark's got a great strategy for landlords who want to move from personal ownership into a slightly different ownership. And that, you should speak to Mark about that. But you know what? There are some people who are going to say, I don't know if I want to be a landlord anymore. I've had increased legislation in 2018 about HMOs, so an extra 175,000 HMOs that didn't require a license now need a license. I think we're going to see the frustration of Section 24 and paying more tax. And then this third thing, which is this COVID-19, there will be some landlords worried that their tenants can't afford to pay, will be the final nail in the coffin. And I think we'll see a whole load of landlords, more than normal, exit the market over the next 6 to 12 months. What this means is that's a great opportunity because in Article 4 areas where it's very difficult to get HMOs, some of those areas will open up as some landlords who own properties there might be prepared to sell them. I also think that we're going to see a real opportunity to use the creative strategies, ones you mentioned before. Things like purchase options, vendor finance, many of those have actually come from the world of commercial property, and they're now very easy to use those in, as long as you know what you're doing, and it's the right circumstances in this current market. And you're right, these are kind of some of the things that we were using in 2008, 2009 when it was difficult to get finance. And, if you understand it, they're very powerful. The problem is many traditional investors, when you start talking about creative things like vendor finance and options, they just don't believe that they're possible because they don't have the personal experience. And I think it's a real shame. I sometimes see people who are really quite experienced people who are very, very closed mind. They think they know it all, which is obviously not the case because lots of people are doing these creative strategies, but you have to use them in the right circumstances. I think what happens is someone may try and go into a purchase this option and it's not right, and then the owner doesn't want to do it. They think, oh, this doesn't work, and that's their limited belief around that topic. So you've got to educate yourself. You've got to find out when it's the appropriate time to use these particular strategies. So what are the opportunities for us? Well, what can we do right now? Well, right now we're in lockdown. We can't actually look at properties right now. What we can do is we can speak to estate agents. Some of those are furloughed, but some of them are still working. They're not actually as busy as they are normally because most people are not thinking about looking at property right now. In fact, I think most property investors are taking a couple of months off, taking it easy, relaxing. And I think those guys, and I understand that, but I think those guys are going to miss the opportunity because we see it, Ranjan, with our property meetings, and I knew you have the same thing as well. We don't have a meeting in August. And a lot of people take August off and relax, which is great. But they take a couple of months to get back into the swing of things sometimes. And those investors who are sitting back doing nothing right now, they'll take a couple of months to get going when we're over this lockdown. And I think they will miss the competitive edge. Whereas those investors who are using the time now to go and speak to estate agents, build the relationships, follow up on properties they may be offered on in the past, which technically sold might have fallen through, or properties where they haven't sold yet, as you quite rightly identified earlier, the sellers of those properties might be even more motivated. And we're not talking about trying to take advantage of people, far from it. We're looking for people who are motivated, who need to sell, and looking for an ethical win-win for those people. And so I think it's a great opportunity. I would suggest people try and get some cash now. Cash is going to be king. If you've got properties where you've got equity that you want to refinance and you're planning to do that, it's a bit difficult to refinance right now, but it might become even harder. So I would suggest if you need to get cash out, get it out now, have it ready to be able to move for some of the great opportunities that are coming up. And the final thing I'll say is, as you mentioned, I have a business called Crowd Property. It's a peer-to-peer lending platform. We are still lending in the current market. We have reduced our loan to value slightly, as many lenders have, but we're seeing lots of great borrowers come to the market with really good opportunities. We got lots of interest from lenders, so we're still funding, and we think we're going to be in a great position as the market grows. Because we are property investors, we understand property, we know a good deal when we see it, and we want to back those deals. So we're very much open for business, and we think it's going to be a really exciting time next 6 to 12 months. That's pretty much it from me.
Absolutely fantastic, Simon. Thank you very much. Very, very inspirational. 1,183 people tuned in to hear your wise words. A lot of people saying the comments and the feedback has been outstanding, really, on the advice that you've given. A couple of little questions, really, on HMOs and is there a loser HMO area which you should really avoid, and what would be their characteristics?
Well, it really depends on what your strategy is. I think good advice generally is you should start investing where you live or work, because you'll probably understand the area better and you'll have a better feeling for it. But obviously, many of our clients, it doesn't stack up so well where they live, so they invest remotely. So that's possible as long as you have a good power team. It used to be that there were no letting agents who could manage HMOs for you. Now there are lots of specialist HMO letting agents who can do that, so you can do it remotely. One thing I think you should look out for, and there's a little mistake that people make. Remember, most estate agents, with all due respect, they might understand local, they don't really understand property investing. And they might have an HMO on the market, say, oh, we've got this great HMO, and call you because you're an investor. Well, the problem is, if that property got its license before October 2018, it might have been licensed at that time. Then the new regulations came in. We got the introduction of the new room sizes. There are a number of HMOs on the market for sale where actually, when you apply for the new HMO license, they won't be as licensed for as many people, because one or even two of the rooms no longer meet the minimum room size.
Yes.
So you've got to be very careful. You might think you're buying a fantastic, high-yielding 6-bed HMO, but if you don't check things like the room size, because you've not educated yourself, you might only be able to rent out for them. So suddenly you've lost £1,000 of your rental income. So that's what you've got to look out for. And doing your due diligence and your research is always really important. What I would suggest is, when you're looking at areas, where are the areas where you've got lots of employment? And that's a bit difficult to judge right now, maybe. But if you've got expanding universities, expanding hospitals, they all have jobs, and that's probably a good area in which you're going to have a good demand for your HMOs.
Yes. No, good advice. Very, very well said. So, as I said, you had loads of people on. 1,188 people currently watching and enjoying this live stream right now. Coming up, spotlight on property education. We'll be looking at fake testimonials on certain websites and all of that. Stay tuned for more on that. If you haven't already done so, please post a picture of how you are enjoying the this live stream. I mean, we've got some picture. This is at Baker Street Property Meet, our Instagram page. Let me just show you some of the pictures that people have put up. Here we got our stream on a big screen somewhere. This is rather nice. There's one where someone's enjoying a bowl of, where's that chicken curry one? That would look really delicious. Someone's got a good post of someone enjoying a rather delicious bowl of chicken curry. Post your pictures of how you are enjoying the Baker Street Property Meet live stream on our Instagram feed. That's at Baker Street Property Meet on Instagram. Also come in with your questions by clicking on our story on Instagram, and we'll get them to our panel in a moment. Now, I mentioned before, we did have Shaf lined up for tonight, but he unfortunately couldn't make it. He sent me an email on Friday. He's basically ill. He's suffering from a high temperature. He's lost his voice. And I do urge you all to reach out to him on social media and give him your very best wishes, because with this pandemic that's out there right now, the last thing we want is for him to get something like that. So I mean, I just pray that he gets better soon. But Shaf has done a fantastic job at really following on from the BBC's in-depth investigation into the training business that Samuel Leeds has been doing. And I think he's done some great stuff. The thing about Alan Sugar, Lord Alan Sugar, was he or was he not a mentor to Samuel? And coming up with the absolute blinder of an actual video from Lord Alan himself saying that no, he did not mentor him. That was, I mean, that really shines a light really on something which is not very good, which is using a sort of testimonial or someone else's name when they did not agree to it. Now, the thing I will say is that our live stream has had a few trolls on some corners of the internet. Some corners of the internet have suggested that Shaf pulled out of this live stream at Baker Street because of myself and Simon's and Mark Alexandra's links to Samuel Leeds. Now, firstly, we've been running the Baker Street Property Meet since 2016. Our live events get 300 people in the room. Our live stream today, we've had more than 1,100 people watching this stream. No one I've ever invited on Baker Street Property Meet has not cherished the opportunity to get in front of such a great audience like you guys. So it just doesn't happen. Now, what have these trolls said? So let's just look this up. So this is what was put up. You can see this on your screen now. So the idea is that Shaf has pulled out, not because he's ill, not because he's sick, but people like Simon, people like Mark, people like myself should be ashamed of links and supporting Samuel Leeds in light of the revelations by the BBC, some of the press, and also by Shaf himself on his YouTube channel. Well, these are the accusations. I'm going to put them to all our speakers. But I will tell you, one of these accusations against one of these three names listed here is actually true. Stay tuned and we'll find out which one. So, Simon.
Yes.
The court alleges. The court alleges that you have mentored Samuel Leeds and have supported him by way of a testimonial. Have you got the testimonial to flash up on screen? And it says words to the effect of. So basically, the allegation is that you've mentored him. You've advocated him as recently as 18 months, and that's basically relating to a testimonial. Now on the screen you can see this is an extract from Samuel Leeds' page. To be fair, it's not his live page, but it was live until a few months ago. So we got it from Wayback Machine. But you can see just below the picture of Samuel and Lord Alan Sugar, there is the testimonial that says, from Simon Zutshi, "I was so impressed with the value that Samuel brings when teaching property investing. Thank you, Simon Zutshi, well-respected property investor. Well, that bit's true. So Simon, did you say those words? Yes or no? Live to 1,175 people.
This is on his crash course website, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So first of all, I was really pissed off that I was below Alan Sugar.
Okay, go on.
And secondly, it's very hard to make a testimonial comment on something you've never actually attended. So I've never been to his crash course, so I can't really make a comment about it. I do know some people who have been to his crash course, and they have told me for a free course, they thought they got some value from it. They said it was good. That's a free course as opposed to a paid course, and I know a lot of the publicity was about a paid course he did. So to set the record straight, let me tell you exactly how I know someone and have interacted with him in the past. So his stepdad was one of the people who did my very first, or maybe a second mastermind program back in 2007. And I think Samuel was about 17 at the time. And that very first program, we video recorded all of the content. And I know for a fact that Samuel watched those videos. And his stepfather asked me if I would have a word with his stepson, who at the time was a magician, working for his dad, who was also a magician. Because I have a link. I'm into property, but also my hobby is magic. It used to be.
Did he give you the title for your book?
No, he didn't. My book is called Property Magic, and so this was. It must have been 2007, 2008-ish.
Yeah.
And so his stepdad said, "Look, will you speak to my stepson? He's doing magic, and I don't think he should be doing that." So I spoke to him. He'd already read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I pointed out to him that, when I was his age, I was at school, I was getting paid to do magic. I quite liked it. I said, you're trading your time for money. Watch the videos your stepdad's got. And I did actually help him, and I encouraged him, if you like, to get into property. And he does credit me in his book and at some of his live events, apparently, because I've never been, I don't know, that I was one of the people that helped him first get into property. So if that's the case, if that's meant, yes, I absolutely did mentor him to get his first property. I helped him, inspired him to do that. And he used the Mortgage Express No Money Down route. I don't think it was in his name because he wasn't quite old enough, but it was around 17, 18. So yes, I did do that. And the other thing I did 18 months ago, I was invited to come and do a YouTube interview. And I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but I'm similar to you, Ranjan. The people see later what I'm talking about. And so I went to his offices. There's a nice, it's a serviced office he's based in, but it's a really nice building. And he also asked me, and this is one of his tactics actually. He gets fairly well-known people in the property world, which you and I are, to do interviews. And I was very happy to do that 18 months ago. And he said, oh, will you just come and talk to my group for a bit? So he gets people who are pretty good at property to come and speak to his group, people who've paid to do his training. So I think I talked for an hour and a half about deal sourcing. So that's the only event he's done that I've actually been to, because I was actually speaking at it for him. And not for a good few years, but we did have Samuel, as we've had many, many property investors speak at the PIN meetings. When you have 51 meetings around the country and you run for 10 months of the year, 500 meetings, we have had lots and lots of speakers come and speak at our meetings. And that's it. So no, I didn't give that testimonial. I didn't get that permission. I did recognize, I think on the video, it's a great video interview I did. If you haven't seen it, I think it's quite good actually. I did acknowledge him that actually I think he'd done a really good job about his YouTube, and he absolutely smashed that really. And I was happy to go on a video to get some exposure. And yeah, I think that's about it really. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, I think it does. I think that clears up a lot. And, they are, we're all in a business where part of what we do is to establish ourselves online, and we do things with other people and all the rest of it. And we do so often with the best information available at that time. And we try to, of course, make different decisions.
And actually, just also,
what was available.
There are other people, Pashay, who have quoted me. So my name is sometimes used in vain. And sometimes people try and borrow credibility. So it's not the first time it's happened.
That's true. So, okay, but the key thing is, this testimonial, basically.
Yes. Well,
It's
I
not
haven't
what it
been to
seems.
his event, so I can't really comment on it. So I didn't give a testimony. I'm not giving my permission for any testimonials. Normally, when you're at events, we collect testimonials. We say, hey, what did you think of the event? We'll normally write it down. That's never happened, no.
Okay, fair enough. So the next person accused, can we have the clip of the trolling text? So Mark Alexander, me old matey, you can't.
I can't hear you, Ranjan.
Sorry about that.
Ranjan, I didn't hear a word of that. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I was just saying all bad things about you. Sorry, I'll just repeat that because I think I had myself on mute, which wasn't good. Okay, so the accusation here is that basically you wrote an article in the aftermath of the tragic suicide of Danny Butcher, who attended a course and well, it was a tragic incident. But you wrote an article about property training or getting loans for property training or something like that. But the accusation is that that article was supporting Samuel Leeds. Do you support Samuel Leeds? Was that article supportive of him?
I don't know Samuel Leeds. I saw a couple of his YouTube videos earlier on in the year, and some of them were okay, relatively inspirational, a bit shallow on depth of knowledge, I thought. Certainly when he talks about tax, then there's a lot of missing information. Yes, I did write an article, and I'll tell you why I wrote the article, Ranjan, because I had a friend, it was two of my friends, lost their son. He committed suicide last year. And when that happened, there was a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blame that was flying around all over the place. And I know how awful it is for anybody who's lost anybody. So I saw that and I thought, okay, there's a lot of blame going on here. I don't know who this Samuel Leeds guy is. So I looked him up on YouTube, watched his video and his response to some of the stuff that had gone on the Panorama program, which I hadn't seen either. And I thought, do you know what? This is the bloody media attacking private rented sector again through the back door. And that's what I got really upset about. So I didn't write an article about Samuel Leeds, saying anything about Samuel Leeds. I was really disappointed, disgusted, and upset when I got a thank you. Somebody actually posted on my forum that said, Samuel Leeds has thanked you on another forum for his supportive comments. And I thought, well, I didn't write any supportive comments. Why not? And I seriously, and a lot of people put pressure on me to take the article down. And I thought, well, I can't take it down now. So the article is still there, and so are all the comments. And you'll see that I am definitely, read the article, read the comments, anybody, I would encourage you to do so. And you'll see that I'm definitely not a supporter of Samuel Leeds. I can't particularly knock the guy because I don't know very much about him, but what I've heard about him hasn't been good.
Okay, listen, for what it's worth, you write great articles. I'm not, in my personal opinion, I'm not sure whether it was one of your best, but it certainly didn't support anything Samuel does. What happened was Samuel's people released a press release saying that your article was supportive of it. Basically, I think he was happy that any article said anything about him.
That's what annoyed me a lot, because
if you read the text of it, whether you agree with what you said or not, that's a different matter. It's a question. The issue is, was it supportive of Samuel? No, it wasn't supportive at all in any way. So basically, if we go back to these trolls' accusations, Simon, you're innocent. Mark, you're innocent. And I said one of our panelists tonight is guilty of the trolls' accusations. So that must be me. Well, let's read what the troll said in the dark corner of the internet. Ranjan B tried to capitalize and leverage Samuel's following by having him speak at his event and also interviewing him on his YouTube channel. What a crime. Well, actually not tried, I actually did. Round about March last year, I had 2,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. We're just starting out, really. Now we're about 15,000 plus. And yes, I got onto YouTube, back in March last year, of course I wanted to leverage someone who had at that time 90,000 followers on YouTube to try to get a little bit of stuff going on and to leverage some of his audience that was already there on YouTube. Of course, guilty as charged. But when I reached out to Samuel and we did that little YouTube video, what information was available to me at that time? Well, at that time, Samuel had appeared on BBC Breakfast News in a lovely little interview about his financial freedom challenge. He had been on videos with Robert Kiyosaki. He'd been on videos with Grant Cardone. I see wonderful testimonials on his website with Alan Sugar. And he's even done stuff with people like Simon Zutshi. When you see all of that, you know, I thought with the information that was available at the time, he was a person to reach out to and do something with. Now, and yes, I did a video with him and I put it on my YouTube channel. Yes, I invited him down to Baker Street. But since what has subsequently emerged, that YouTube video interview is no longer on our YouTube channel. We have delisted it. And the videos that we took of Samuel presenting at our Baker Street property meet, we have not released on YouTube and we do not plan to release. So, yes, I'm guilty. Yeah, I had 2,000 subscribers back in March. Of course, I wanted to leverage on Samuel's YouTube fame. We all do things with the benefit of the information we have at a particular moment in time. And we all do different things with hindsight and with knowledge of what happens in the future. Of course, it's all sort of different now. But at that time, you know, you use the best knowledge available. And quite frankly, when you are sitting down to do a little YouTube video with someone, you're not necessarily checking out a credit report and checking them out in Companies House and all this sort of stuff. I'm not going into a JV with that person. So there's a different level of due diligence that you do just for a little chit chat. Thanks, Rajesh, for telling me I've got a nice jacket. So this is all well and good. I hope we've kind of revealed and dealt with those troll issues. But I think there are a lot of serious issues in property education sector, particularly for consumers, particularly for members of the public. Because let's face it, we're in a time now where if you want to be successful with anything, you have to get educated. You can't just figure it out on your own. 20 years ago, there was far less education around in anything. So therefore, you had the time to pick things up on your own and muddle through on your own. These days, if you sit there and just revisit mistakes that other people have made and try to figure it out on your own, you'll be spending 3, 4, 5 years trying to master something, while other people are getting ahead, are getting in the game and finding all the opportunities and shortcutting all the mistakes that you're making naturally because they've had the benefit of some training. So education, equipping yourself with knowledge is absolutely key, no matter what you want to do. But the thing is, what is the right education? There are great guys out there who I learn from, who are the real deal, who walk the talk, who deliver great quality training. And there's two factors with education, I believe. It's being able to do it, and it's having done it and having the track record, but it's also being able to translate that information into a format that other people can easily digest and implement. That is the skill, if you like, of teaching and educating. So it's a doing skill and an educating skill. I've got Simon on the call. He's brilliant at it. I've seen him at work with his, he invited me to one of his graduate days. I've seen him at firsthand do it. It's very, very skilled at just the art of educating. And I like to think I, do a reasonable job in the sector that I do, which is commercial property kind of training. But for people out there, when there are new educators popping up all the time on Facebook and on social media, there's some guy that pops up with a flash car and this, that, and the other, and it says, get rich quick, do this and that, click here, click there, and free this, free that, and you'll be rich. And the other problem I find with educators, from a personal point of view, is I tell it how it is. And if I tell it how it is, some of the new kids on the block accuse me of being a hater, a dream stealer. And I hate that, because I'm not a dream stealer. I just know how it is, and I'm telling it how it is. So it's very easy for a new guy on the block to say, well, you know, that guy's an old fuddy-duddy, he's a dream stealer, he doesn't want you to be successful, he's trying to pull up the ladder after he's done his bit. That's not the case. We're just keeping it real. We're telling you proper information as to how to succeed in this wonderful world of property, not selling you some kind of dream of get rich quick. Sorry for the rant. You know, I just needed to sort of go there. But I'm joined, very luckily joined by Cyril Thomas. Cyril Thomas has come up with a organization, or he's founder of an organization called the Property Investors Bureau. And this has received industry-wide backing. And I believe its aim is to seek to bring some standardization, raise the standards, bring up a kite mark, and bring up some kind of accreditation for property investor training so that people know what they're sort of getting involved in. Cyril, thanks very much for joining me. Are you out there?
Excellent. I am here, Ranjan, and I'd like to say thank you for putting this together. I know it takes a lot of work to put together a meeting of this size, especially the UK's largest online property meet.
Yes, well, you've got 1,084 people online to find out from you what the Property Investors Bureau is about and what it's going to do to solve problems like, you know, we've just heard about fake testimonials popping up on websites. So what's the Property Investors Bureau about, and what can be done to improve standards?
Okay, so the summary of Property Investors Bureau is to support property investors and to provide resources that can help property investors along their property investment journey. But the problem we have in our sector is that it's very difficult for new property investors to differentiate the credible from the not so credible, because it doesn't take a genius to be able to put together a fancy social media profile and to put together some fake testimonials and to convince consumers who maybe don't know any better in regards to where they should place their money. So when I first got into the industry, I knew guys like you, I knew Simon, I had the privilege to have good relationships with you both, and I was able to tell the good from the bad, but not everybody has that privilege. At this point in time, when you go online and you do searches, there is no organization out there that can help you to differentiate the credible from the not so credible. Now, I'm not going to speak about any individual property educator today, but what I'm going to say is that we've got the chance to change the culture of property education. Now, I got into property investment in 2006, so how long is that now? It's going on 14 years. And when I got into property education at that point in time, the same things were happening. There were rogue property educators then, and there are rogue property educators now. Not much has changed. But what has changed now is that the industry has said, we've had enough. A number of very reputable property educators have come together and said, listen, we've had enough of people branding us with the same stick. We want to be able to differentiate ourselves. We do not want to be seen as one size fits all. We are all rogues and we're all in the same boat together. You have been tarnished with the same brush as some of the other educators out there. When I know you're one of the good guys, Ranjan.
Sorry, I think we have to pep it up a bit. I mean, we've got a comment in the chat box saying the chat box is the only thing that's kept me awake for the last 20 minutes. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, in that case, Simon, let me speed it up for these chat guys who are listening to some property education last month. So
Leon, no sales pitch. It's no sales pitch. Go on. Sorry, Cyril.
Unfortunately, we've got nothing to sell the property investors today. But what is happening now is we've come up with a code of practice that all credible property educators can subscribe to. We've come up with a scheme for property educators. It's a 6-month process to get through the scheme, so it's quite rigorous. We're not saying that it's going to solve all problems overnight. It's going to take a while, but the point is that we've finally got something which we started to do, and we're going to start changing the culture in the property education sector. This is it's
a code of practice that everyone signed up to.
That's correct.
There to be terms and conditions for property education products that people will have to sign up to. I mean, course providers will have to sign up to, and also standards for testimonials and reviews and the like. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So it's also a situation that you have to be very transparent with your money back guarantees. You'd have to be very transparent about your terms and conditions. All of these things that are used to maybe obscure the way in which less credible property educators sell to unassuming consumers.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Let me bring in Simon. Simon is a huge UK property educator. So what's your take on having a bit more uplifting standards in the industry? It's well needed, isn't it?
I think it's a great idea because, as you say, especially in the last couple of years when it's been a booming market, you get a lot of people who've done quite well in property themselves, usually because they've been trained by someone, and then they set themselves up as a coach, trainer, mentor, etc. And as you said, there's a very big difference between actually being able to go and do property and actually teach it so that people can implement it. And that's very, very huge. And I think actually the advantage that you and I, Ranjan, have, because we've been doing it so long, we probably get better with time, and just having done lots of it, you hopefully get better, because if you don't get good, you don't survive, right? And I think for me, it's you know, a lot of people on social media talk about how successful they are and what they've got and how much they're worth and how many properties. Anyone who's seen me, I don't talk about what I've got or what I've done. What I talk about is what my students have done, because for me, that's more important. Who you know, I can, and when Cyril said he wants to do this, I said, brilliant. I said, look, I can prove, not that I ever really talked about, I can prove about all the properties I own in my own name. I can show about my assets and things. And I'm happy to do that to an organization who's independent to say, yes, that's true. Not that I really talk about it, but as I say, it's more important about what my students have actually done as a result of the investments they've made and the actions they've taken. Because I think you mentioned it earlier, you know, I think sometimes people look at property investing as a get rich quick. And we've had some criticism because our banner for Mastermind is that we'll show you how you can get £1 million of property and a £50,000 profit in 12 months. And people say, oh, that's not possible, or that's bullshit. And I am very clear when I teach, say that's absolutely possible, because we had lots of people do it. Is it guaranteed? No, it's not. Does everyone do it? No, most people take more time than that. But the thing is, we're very clear that it takes a huge amount of time and effort. And we put out lots of videos of people who've done our training, done very well. But if you listen, they've all said it's been bloody hard work and it's not easy. And if you're looking for the easy get rich quick, it doesn't really exist in property. And I think the problem is the way some people sell property education is they're painting this dream and they're not having the reality. So a sense check from an independent third party to say, well, is this person, what they're claiming, is it true about what they've done and what they do? And also, can they verify that they've got, if they have a testimonial on the website, they've got the proof that someone's written that testimonial, for example. You know,
Yes.
I think it's really
exactly.
important.
Simon, it's also the situation that the property redress scheme has also partnered up with a scheme. So if there is a complaint against a property educator, you have a reputable third-party adjudicator that can get involved and be impartial about the situation.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, that is. Okay, so we're going to kind of move on from this discussion, because the wonderful thing about, you know, when you have when we have the regular Baker Street meet, I mean, people, you know, sit there in the audience and whatever. You don't really know what people are thinking, but you see these chat windows come up, and you might see me smirk now and then. I've had everything from, you know, you haven't clipped the back of your hair. No, I haven't clipped the back. I did it myself. I mean, it was very hard with the clippers in lockdown. I've had people comment on my jacket. I've had people say that Simon was looking bored for a second or two, and you know, people are just letting it rip in here. So people are just saying, you know, whatever they want. So it's lovely. So I haven't had, I think a lot of people probably aren't on Instagram or haven't figured out how to ask the question on Instagram. I have had a few on there, but what I will ask is that for now, because a lot of people wanted to get back onto the post-COVID-19 opportunities, which we'll do right now. So if I can ask you guys in the chat window to just leave the YouTube chat for questions you want me to ask to the panel. So if you've got any questions you want to ask to the panel, just leave that, and we'll kind of suspend the nice banter and chit chat and comments about my hair and Mark's facial expressions and all of that until a little bit later. Oh dear, another comment on my jacket. Okay, forget about my jacket. Why is it? No, I cut my own hair. Okay, anyway, so enough comment about my hair. So just fire in with some questions then. Oh, thanks very much. What a complete waste of time this evening is. Well, you don't have to tune in. I mean, it's YouTube. There are hundreds of live streams out there. Tune into something else. I mean, we've been on for 1.5, and what a waste of time this evening is. Okay, so I've had one question here on from Haji, I think it is. I think it's a good question, actually. What techniques can I use to close a purchase during COVID-19 lockdown? Simon, do you have any input on that?
Well, it really depends. One of the biggest problems right now is mortgages. Many lenders for a while stopped taking new applications or even processing existing applications because they had to divert everyone to deal with the mortgage holidays that a lot of landlords were requesting. If you haven't actually had the survey, your application's going nowhere at the moment. Now, some lenders are doing desktop valuations, but if it's anything than a normal vanilla buy-to-let, you know, they want a proper survey, and that's, you know, as soon as we get out of lockdown, those things are going to open up. So progressing actual purchases is going to be difficult probably till we get through lockdown. Some solicitors are realizing that they can, you know, use Zoom to witness signatures on contracts and things, which has obviously moved things forward, which is great. But again, what this means is there's going to be a huge opportunity because a lot of sales are going to fall over, and those sellers are going to be even more motivated. So I would suggest a big tip here is, if you're looking for deals, start speaking to agents, speak to sellers you've spoken to in the past, just touch base, see how they are, how's their sale going, etc. And there can be some opportunities to pick up. But we might need to wait just a few weeks or maybe a month till we're actually out of lockdown to really be able to move forward properly, is my view.
Okay, brilliant. And Mark, let's make sure you're
I'm unmuted.
Still wide and awake. And
I've always been awake. I
know you have.
I've been reading like comments on the YouTube channel, not realising that actually my face is showing. So hopefully I haven't been picking my nose or something. I don't know what's been going on about this. All these questions and comments about my facial expressions. I wasn't falling asleep though, I promise you.
No. Listen, I've been asked about freezer shares. I mean, we've got a video on freezer shares with Mark, which you can watch. I'll put a link when this goes on replay. But Mark, freezer shares, what's it all about? And how's it strategy?
So, ordinarily, if you own your own shares in your limited company, then as your properties increase in value, so does the value of your estate. It's possible to separate your business into different classifications of shares. Some of the classifications own the growth, some of the classifications own the dividend rights and the voting rights. So you might want to keep the ones with the dividends and voting rights and freeze the value of them, and then give away the new shares that you've created that have no value at the moment, but have all the future growth. Mm-hmm. You could either put those into a discretionary trust or give them to your kids. But as you said, it's a big subject, Ranjan. I think our video goes on at least half an hour.
Yes, it does,
so
yes.
Watch that, but it's an inheritance tax planning strategy to summarize.
And it's fantastic. It's a fantastic little thing. Simon, you talked about HMOs, and a few people are raising this in the comments. What do you think? How do you think co-living, space standards, and just living in an HMO will be affected by COVID-19 and the ongoing requirement to social distance and all the rest of it? And what extra liabilities do you see or responsibilities being forced on HMO landlords for communal areas?
Well, I think self-isolation is actually something that the government are suggesting people is their own responsibility. So first of all, in an HMO, everyone has their own room, first of all. And actually the government suggests that people do self-isolate for 14 days within that. And if they have no symptoms, it's then fine to mix with the other housemates. And actually within a shared house, it's possible for, not everyone has to be in the kitchen at the same time. As long as it's reasonable size property, you can still have kind of reasonable social distancing within their property. So I don't think there's going to be any extra implication on landlords for that. There are some, on the government website, there are some guidelines you can point your tenants to so they understand about social distancing and how that works. So I don't think that's going to be any other implications. I mean, you've got HMOs. What's your view on that?
Well, until the government puts any regulations on us, I mean, that's there's not much sort of we can do. A lot of our HMOs are self-contained as they can be. We have relatively few with the communal spaces. We did have a tenant wanting to move out, which I thought was shocking. A tenant wanted to move out because one of the other occupants was a doctor, because they thought that might put them at extra risk. So you're suddenly getting people who consider other occupants in the, I mean, it's not, you wouldn't think, I mean, in the old days, you just make sure you don't put drunks and homeless people in. Now you have to worry about, well, am I putting a doctor into my HMO? There used to be gold-plated tenants. I mean, obviously we're not stopping letting to doctors, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is crazy.
So if I can just bring Mark in with a question. You're a bit of a sort of an international dude. I've got a question from Hossein, who's saying he's got money. He's worried about where to keep it. Do you think banks are safe right now? Where do you stash yours? I mean, what banks are safe? Are they safe right now? What's your opinion on all of that?
Oh, it's a tough one. It's a question that my wife and I asked the other day. I bank with the same bank as the Queen. So my banker is a Coutts & Co. So if they go down and steal all my money, they're stealing all the Queen's as well. So I feel reasonably safe with that. But we did have the discussion about whether we should sort of split some money into different bank accounts. We already do, because we have homes in Russia, America, Portugal, and Malta anyway. So we've got money stashed around in different places. In terms of where I store my money, that's a whole sort of strategy thing, and maybe we ought to do a video on it sometime, Ranjan. But I can't answer that in 2 minutes.
Okay. And Simon, I'm going to ask you to kind of think on your feet here, because I've got a question from someone called Burning Desire, and they've got a burning desire to know what sort of properties should you search for over the next 6 months for optimal growth. What would you hang your hat on?
Who knows? Well, I think over the next 6 months we're going to see property prices come down. Mm-hmm. And what happened in the last crash was actually it's the places that had the most growth saw the biggest falls. So up north, the property boomed, that had a big crash. Northern Ireland boomed, that had a big crash. Interestingly, those areas have not recovered that much, as much as the rest of the country. So I don't think they're going to fall as much as they did before. So I guess the COVID-19 accepted, the general rule of thumb is look for areas where you think you're going to have a faster or higher population growth rate than other areas, and that should probably have a higher growth rate. So you can probably speak to local councils to find out about development plans, say extensions of universities, hospitals. They're building business parks and incentivizing business to come in. That would suggest an increase in employment, thus an increase in demand for accommodation.
Okay. Now, very good answer. Very comprehensive. Mark, I did mention to you guys before, we're releasing a video on Friday with Mark all about if you want to move abroad as a property investor and how to do that in a tax efficient way. But someone's just asked about Portugal or Malta, basically. You've chosen Malta, but a lot of people are choosing Portugal as their sort of destination. I mean, I know it's a big subject, but is it just flip a coin, or are there distinctive advantages between the two locations?
From a tax perspective, Portugal wins hands down. So no dividend tax for 10 years, no capital gains tax on foreign investments for 10 years, 10% tax on your pension. So fantastic. Malta wins hands down for a bit of feeling and being more English. So everybody speaks English. It's a national language. They drive on the left. They've got red post boxes. And one of the best health schemes, NHS, is in the world. I know that we say ours is good. They've only lost 4 lives in the COVID-19 virus in the whole of Malta. Their recovery rate, or their infection rate, is only 0.5%. So differences in the two. Interesting you say I live in Malta. I'm actually between the two. So I can't be non-resident in Malta anymore because I won't spend 184 days there with my plans. So I've actually now got a home in Portugal, and I obtained my NHR residence in Portugal on Friday the 13th, believe it,
Oh,
of
wow.
March. Yeah. So I'm now NHR Portugal.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. Okay, so you may notice I haven't actually taken many of your questions during this. I'm going to actually go back later and do some videos on a lot of these questions you guys have asked, because you asked some good ones. Just quickly though, Leon Dyer has asked me, are warehouses a good investment? Well, if you want to do commercial buy-to-let, meaning own commercial property for the purposes of renting it out as a commercial asset, warehouses are probably the best commercial property asset to do commercial buy-to-let on, because the reason is there is a supply-demand imbalance. There isn't enough of them out there, and that's because so many internet traders have started up. There's a shortage of warehousing space. They're not being built fast enough, and if you have them, you'll easily find a tenant for them. With other forms of commercial assets, such as offices and residential, particularly in the post-COVID-19 environment, there's likely to be an oversupply of those. And for those classes of commercial properties, I believe the best angle is to implement permitted development rights to convert as much of that space as possible into residential usage. And that's how I'd answer sort of that sort of strategy. Just a little question for Cyril, because I know, we all had a question on cash and all of that. I know you've been following some alternative strategies, should we say, for cash management during these times. Would you like to sort of share any views on that?
Yeah, so Ranjan, we speak very often, and you know that I followed your lead when you started doing all of transferring the properties into limited companies, etc., and also taking some money out of the properties. So we did that just before COVID hit. And I didn't want to just leave the money in the bank, so I decided to look into shares, because I think right now we've seen some shares that are at an all-time low. We got lucky I think about a week ago with the oil crash, so we shorted oil. We've also put some money into the banking shares, so you've got banks shares with Barclays or shares of RBS. Those shares have seen quite a drop. And within the last month, if you put shares in at the beginning of the month, you'll be seeing a 30% return on those shares right now. I know there's been a bit of negative news about Barclays today, but that has not dented the fact that we're still about 30% up since the beginning of the month. So I think looking at shares right now, whilst you're in lockdown, might be a useful thing to do. But obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, so do tread with caution.
Yes, I mean, it's an interesting issue that you raise. We have all, I guess a lot of us who have incorporated our portfolios into limited companies have been building a little bit of a war chest. A lot of people have been building a war chest, really waiting for the election result to happen, which came with Boris being elected and all the rest of it. And we saw a little bit of a Boris bounce. And really, before people could deploy any of that, we were hit with COVID-19. So there is a little bit of a challenge there of what to do with those funds while you're waiting for opportunities. And I think there has been a massive overreaction in the stock market. I mean, if you had just invested a month ago in stocks like McDonald's and Marriott hotel groups, and some of the stocks that have been massively affected, if you like, by the shutdown of the economies, both here in the US, they've already experienced a massive bounce back. A quick question from Romy, I saw, asking about serviced offices. Very good question to ask. I mean, Romy, of course, knows that we run a serviced office building. We have 45 suites here in St Albans, Hertfordshire, where we're broadcasting from right now. Now, serviced offices, of course, means flexible leases. People rent individual suites, people rent co-working spaces and desks and the like. And flexible leases mean that at times of COVID-19, people can easily hand in their lease and basically go. So that is pretty much what's happened. But as soon as we come out of lockdown, the serviced office sector is going to be one of the first to recover. We are already seeing, since pretty much the end of last week, tick up. Every day we're getting more and more serviced office inquiries from potential tenants looking for suites and co-working space. Because when we come out of lockdown, who the hell is going to want an office that commits them to a 5 or 10-year lease? People are going to want flexible terms because it's a little bit more uncertain. They don't know whether they're going to grow massively in a year or contract. So serviced office space is going to recover very, very fast. We're already seeing that effect as more and more talk about lockdown ending is happening in the media. We're getting a significant uptick in inquiries. So that's what I kind of say on that. Okay, so what I would like to do now, we're going to wrap up. Before we wrap up, I will tell you a little bit about next month's meet, but I'm just going to ask each one of our speakers to give one succinct point, if you like, a couple of sentences, no more than a couple of sentences on their number one post-COVID-19 opportunity that they're looking at. So I'll start with Mark, then Simon, then Cyril. So just have a think about that while I'm kind of wrapping up. I hope you guys have enjoyed this Baker Street live stream experience. We've got 955 people watching us now. Last time, lots of people watched it on replay. This video will be available to replay. We'll also time code various bits of it so you can dive in and out to different sections as you kind of see fit. So, Mark from Florida, well, for the present from Florida, what's your number one opportunity you want people to think about?
I want them to think about the tax structure they're operating in right now and whether that's the right one for them. It's so cheap to find out. I don't want to do a sales pitch here, but look at our sales offering and you'll find that it's rather unique. That's all I'll say.
I think we're entrepreneurs, and for entrepreneurs, tax on the face of it is boring. Let's face it. We want to get out there and do entrepreneurial stuff. We're thinking about the deal. We're thinking about the margins. We're thinking about all that sort of stuff. But the thing that people don't realize, I think, is that if you've got a massive hole in the bottom of your bucket, there's no point going out there and making that extra pound. So as an entrepreneur, sooner or later, you have to learn about this sort of stuff. And what better time in lockdown than to kind of just seek out a little bit more information. Property118.com. I know Mark writes some great articles on this sort of subject. Go on there and search out some of his stuff and make sure you're structured in the right way to benefit from the opportunities post COVID-19. Mark, thanks very much for joining us.
Excellent.
Simon, what do you have to say our budding entrepreneurs on their way?
Great point from Mark. Now's a great time to make sure all your ducks are in a row, your taxes right, your systems are in place. Use the time to learn and educate yourself and get ready for a recession, for a declining property market, whether it's commercial, residential. There are going to be some great opportunities out there. And actually, I agree with Cyril. I think it's a good idea to diversify your investments. My one comment about stock market, obviously it's come down, it's rallied a bit. I think we're going to see the stock market come down further as we go into more recession. But then it's going to have at least a good few years of recovery period as well. So diversification is really important, but always education has to be the key to make sure you know what you're doing and you're in a position to make informed and intelligent investments.
You haven't got your catchphrase in
What's my
this.
catchphrase?
Invest with knowledge, invest with skill. You made me say it now.
There's that one. Yeah, I've got a few actually, but yeah, invest with knowledge, invest with skill. There you go.
I thought you were just going to say that. Well, thank you very much, as always, Simon. Lots of words of wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ranjan.
And Cyril, what do you want to leave our audience with?
All good advice. I'll reiterate what I said earlier, but with a caveat that we also have the transition period coming to an end soon. The elephant in the room, Brexit. So if you are going to get into stocks, try and be out before that period comes to an end, because as it seems right now, there's no indication that transition period is going to be extended. And if we do fall off a ladder, come the end of the transition period, you probably do not want to be caught up in the stock market.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, as always, Cyril. Fantastic advice and great initiative on the PIB. Search for the Property Investors Bureau on Facebook. There's a lot more information. They have a website. It's Property Investors Bureau. What is the website again?
That's pibuk.org. That's pibuk.org.
Okay, so pibuk.org. Check out what it's what that organization is trying to do. And I mean, look, it's not top-down regulation. It's the industry coming together to impose or put in place a common code of conduct. And it's a start. You have to start somewhere. And it's full credit to Cyril for actually just taking the time and putting in the resource to actually make this happen. And you've had a lot of backing for that, and you've done a great job in doing so much in such a short period of time. Shifted a lot of sand. So before I give you my 2 pennies worth on what to leave you with, do share some love for all our speakers in the comments. We've had plenty of comments about people with bad hair and bored expressions and all of that. I mean, let's hear some love if you liked what we've said to you over the last couple of hours. What I'm going to leave you with is the opportunities in the wonderful world of commercial property, because I think, or I know, that over the coming months, you're going to see more commercial properties available for sale than at any other time. There'll be an imbalance between supply and demand in the favor of the savvy entrepreneur. So if you know what you're looking for, what you can easily add value to and turn around and turn a profit to, then it is going to be like shooting fish in a barrel. That's the right phrase. Yes, yes. It's going to be easy. Sometimes I get a bit confused with my metaphors and analogies. So I think there's never been a better time for commercial property. But again, during lockdown, it's time to sort of equip yourself with the skill. The thing with property is, I think, 10, 15 years ago, when it was just vanilla buy-to-let, there was really one strategy that fit all. Everyone just bought a property and rented it out as a single family let. Property is a broad church. It's a broad church of opportunity. Different things float different people's boats. There is no one way to succeed in property. There are multiple paths you can take. Whichever path you take, whichever strategy you follow, do so having educated yourself, do so in a strategy that you're passionate about, and do so where you surround yourself with others doing the similar kind of strategy, because in a market like we're getting into now, there's no margin for error with mistakes. You've got to do it really with some tried and tested learning behind you. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for more kind words and smiley faces on the chat window. Guys, I couldn't have done it without you. You made me look passable on this live stream, so thank you for your exemplary performances and your words of wisdom. True stars, Mark Alexander, Simon Zutshi, and Cyril Thomas. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for staying with us. Join us next month. Do we have the graphic of next month's meet? We've got another online session next month. What day is it again? I can't remember. May 27th. We have a number of speakers who will be sharing their views. We're probably going to be talking about financing and financing opportunities post-COVID-19. We have Helen Chorley. Helen Chorley is actually a Malta resident where Mark has taken abode. Now, I met Helen because she is on a TV program that I'm on, which is Property Elevator on Property TV Sky channel, and it's basically a show like Dragon's Den where a bunch of us sit there and people come along and pitch their property projects, and Helen is one of the angel investors that funds those things. So she'll be talking about what floats her boat in terms of property deals that are pitched to her, and what you have to do to kind of get her to think about investing in one of your property projects. Evan MacDonald is a developer from, he's founder of Melt Homes. He's got a number of developments currently on the go, and he'll be talking about development financing and how to get funds for your development projects during and post COVID-19. Susanna Cole is a buy-to-let entrepreneur from Bristol. She'll be talking a little bit about raising money with private investors and how to do some of the below market value property investing stuff on residential properties. I'll be on hand, of course, to host it and give you my 2 pennies worth. So that is next time. Make sure you follow us on Facebook it's Baker Street Property Meet. We've got a Facebook group. Keep up to date with news on our next event. And also our Instagram is at Baker Street Property Meet. If you haven't already done so, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified as soon as we upload a new video. We've got a lot of content to send out to you guys over the next week, and it's all dedicated to helping you be successful in property. So that's all coming up on our YouTube channel. That's it. Have fun. Have a good rest of the evening. Stay safe. And property investment is going to be a lot of fun over the next few years. Guys, can I have a nice
evening, everybody.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
evening.
Good night.
Brilliant. Adios.